Doesn't occur in Cuba, doesn't occur in China, doesn't occur in Russia. This is what freedom is. And so I hope everybody will go out and vote today, whoever you're for,
sure,
to validate this American process. I'm going to start with a couple of unusual places. I don't know what time it closes, but I'm going to look at the...
Oh, shit.
Don't worry. Don't worry. Just hang tight. Here we go.
I love Newt Gingrich.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Pretty unusual and a sign that a...
The fuck?
Now, tell me what that is.
You mean stylistically with
Yeah,
the music?
yeah.
Jazz, rock, classical, bebop, modern, bluegrass, country.
Wowie.
It's just...
Folks, welcome inside the Parisi Palace, high above 2919 East Broadway. This is a special edition of the Jake Feinberg Show, coming to you live on Power Talk. Please go to our website, powertalk.live, download our free app, and stream all of our live local programming, including yours truly, the Jake Feinberg Show. And we can't thank you enough for making us part of your day today here on Election Day. And without further ado, I want to bring back a friend of the program. It's been a good long time, and we got a lot more to cover. Richard Greene, welcome back to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Jake. Hope you're doing well.
I'm doing great, man. Were you able to catch that introduction there?
Well, that sounded like Dog's Rag, but what happened was that Newt Gingrich was talking, and then Dog's Rag fitted in underneath him.
Well, no,
Are you aware of that?
I was curious. No, of course, but what I'm curious about is whether you caught the audio there of the woman asking.
Yes.
Now that was you talking.
Oh, I think I was putting somebody on because it's new acoustic. That's the only word for that.
Well, no, you.
I might have been.
Yeah, no, that. But do you know what record that's off of? Because I ripped that off a record and played it for Grisman about a year ago.
It's his first Grisman Quartet or whatever the name of the band was at that time. I think that's his first album. He recorded it right after I left the group, after we created this format together. I don't know. I shouldn't have left.
No. Okay, so that and I can send you a copy of it. That was your group. That was your band on. I'm not exactly sure why Pacific Standard Oil did this, but they put out a series of instrumentals. It could have been strings, brass, percussion, piano, and on one of them, it's Richard Greene with a quartet, and that's you talking, and that you were interviewed for an 8-minute stretch, and it's just epic. And I have it on vinyl. And it's great to hear you talking about whatever you just said, new acoustic music. But in fact, you were saying it was all genres. That woman said, "Wowee!" But that was you talking. That was you being interviewed on that vinyl.
Yeah, I remember clearly. It was in San Francisco, I think.
That's right.
I don't have a copy of that, so I kind of got flummoxed when I was listening to it because, to be honest with you, it sounded better than the version that he eventually recorded on that first album, and I was confused.
Well, no, it is.
It's really good.
It's so amazing because you refer to him as the mandolin player, and it's hysterical because it's right during this whole bastion of activity that was going on amongst you guys, and it really is a trip, man. I mean, it is. That Strings album, there's another epic interview with Vassar Clemens, who is not somebody who was a huge talker, but man, when he did talk, you just cracked up because he said so much funny stuff. And I wanted you to talk a little. I mean, Richard, it's been so amazing. I first connected with you when I discovered this Gary Burton album, and as I've gone along, I said, really, out of all the cats who wanted, I hate labels, but out of any cat who wanted to play authentic, burning jazz music, I think you might be the cat that tried to do it out of all your peers, out of all your bluegrass peers. I don't know anybody else who was able to pull it off. Really, Jerry couldn't do it. David has put it into his music, but your adherence to wanting to play jazz is very evident in that certain time. And I just wanted you to talk a little bit about, if you had got a chance to see Charles Lloyd, Dolphy, who were the cats that made a monster impression on you in the jazz context?
Well, Eric Dolphy, total killer. David and I, actually, I think David and I were fanatical about him back then. But I really appreciate what you said about the jazz thing. I did some recordings with Tony Rice back then, and there's, like, for example, Green Dolphin Street, total jazz tune.
Total.
And I just love the way we did that. It was just, I think it was me and Sam Bush and Tony Rice and, oh God, I can't remember the bass player who it might have been, but it was a quartet. And it was wonderful. So, and I'm so glad you appreciate that and perceive that about what I was trying to do. That's exactly what I was trying to do. I was transcribing Cannonball Adderley, trying to memorize it. And a funny thing happened. I had a bunch of LPs of that genre and my little book of transcriptions of those guys. And when I went on the road, came back, my house was robbed, and that's all they took. My LPs and my transcriptions. Bizarre.
That must have been a total set. That's ridiculous. I don't know what robber would ever do that. What the heck, man?
I know it was a setback, and I sort of stopped doing that at that point. It was so frustrating. But to be honest with you, I couldn't play anything like Cannonball Adderley on the violin. It's just not. I wasn't getting it through that method. So the way I stopped trying, which was a good thing. And just sort of introduce stuff I liked in playing that was jazz-like, not because I couldn't do the alto saxophone on the violin, and that's the epitome of what I loved. Charlie Parker to begin with, obviously, Sonny Stitt. Those guys were just killing me. It has this beautiful tone as well.
And also, like,
so that's that.
Yeah, I mean, the idea, to me, their sequencing of ideas is confounding. I mean, you talk about Sonny Stitt, and that Bird is in a class by himself, but Sonny Stitt was like, I've talked to cats that were in his rhythm sections. I mean, he just would talk about, he'd say, "You see it, man. We go on the road. You'll meet up with other cats, and you'll see our stamina is just much higher. We'll wear them down." They just burn, and 20, forgive me, I'm not a musician, but 20 verse, 20 choruses. I mean, he just kept going over and over and over and over, and it's like these things are spilling out of him. Because my tentacles are so far out on Facebook, I connected with a independent film producer, and I'm producing a documentary on Stan Getz. Getz was the same way. Most people don't even know that Getz. A seminal album in 55 it's called For Musicians Only, and it's Dizzy, Sonny Stitt, and Stan Getz, and you listen to them, they're blowing their tails off. I mean, can you talk about jazz-like settings? Can you give an example of a jazz-like setting when you realized that you couldn't do the exact replica of a transcription of a canon solo?
Well, it's kind of hard to talk about. It's a certain feel, like the transition from bluegrass fiddle into what I think is a jazzier fiddle is so great. I think what it is, when I'm trying to, say, back to that Green Dolphin Street or that type of music, I would do very little of the bluegrass vernacular in there. But it's still me. I mean, it's still my sound. I do the same slides and everything. Just certain standard bluegrass figures I would just not do. So which forced me to do other stuff. Also, the bowing might be a little more separate bows than slurred bows. It's a tough question you're asking me.
I know. I realize it's. I mean, here it is. I mean, Burton brought you into the studio. It says here.
Yeah.
It says here you played with Joe Farrell as well. Is that true?
I was just going to mention that. Yes, I did. That was a wild thing. I recorded a song called "You're in My Heart" with Rod Stewart.
Right.
Which, as a sideman, I'm making money from. It's incredible. I don't know what you can't imagine what he makes from this stuff. But that's.
Go ahead.
Anyway, I recorded it, and I recorded it. Did I tell you the story in our last interview?
No way. No.
It was on a Saturday morning. This was Warner Brothers vinyl. And on Monday, it was on the radio going to #1. I don't know how they did that. But power is power. And if you had if you had record business power, you could pull stuff off like that. Get something out in 2 days, over a weekend.
That is
So
incredible.
anyway.
That's amazing. If you have power,
Yeah.
If you have power, you got power. That's exactly right.
That's right. So there it is on the radio. It went, I don't know, went pretty high up. I don't know, #1 or whatever, but a big Rod Stewart hit. And this jazz guy calls me, says, I'm covering "You're in My Heart." Is there any way you could play it like Richard Greene did on on Rod Stewart's record? He says to me. Oh no, he didn't say. Is there any way you could play it like that guy on the Rod Stewart record? He didn't. Yeah, that's how it was put to me. So I said, well, yeah, fine, I'm that guy. And that was a funny thing. It was not jazz. I don't know if I've ever heard. I think I've heard the products from back then. It wasn't very jazzy. He was trying to cross over.
I'm looking here. Yeah, no, "You're in My Heart," the final acclaim.
Yeah.
Rod Stewart. There was a Joe Farrell tune. So someone called. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
Joe was that. That's kind of not my. I don't know. To me, the burning quality of jazz kind of went away for a variety of reasons. But all I'm saying is there were cats that were looking for you to sonically expand the music outside of just your the bluegrass. And so it is difficult to talk about. But I have something, Richard. I want you to take a listen to this. This is Name That Voice. I want you to try to name that voice, and then we'll come back and talk about it. Hold on.
All right.
Of a modern approach to sort of like fusion. It was an early
I forget the exact wording.
to sort of like fusion. It was an early
Richard Greene. You and Richard did when you meet him at the Ash Grove with Scotty Stoneman.
yes, yes.
Please tell me this story, Larry. This is. I mean, I'll be set for life after this.
Well, I was rehearsing with Richard Greene on a contemporary record for Warner Brothers. It was kind of a more of a modern approach to sort of like fusion. It was more of an earlier fusion. Paul Lagos played drums. He was playing drums, and we rehearsed at Paul's house for a year.
Oh my God.
We put together all this music, and Richard got a deal with Warner Brothers, and they finally released the record. Well, no, they finally put the record. They mastered all the tapes, got it all ready, and then they scrapped it.
Okay, Richard. Whose voice is that?
It's a little more articulate than I remember. It might be Larry Taylor.
You're 100% right. Larry Taylor.
Yeah.
I did an interview with him in February of this year before Canned Heat came to Tucson, and he finally broke down the story of, because here's the thing, this is what's been confounding to me. I get the Strings album on Pacific Standard Oil, and they give all these recommended albums. It might be Sugarcane Harris, it might be Jean-Luc Ponty, and then they recommend Richard Greene in The Zone. Okay, on Warner Brothers with a catalog number. All right, it's in that on that vinyl, right? So I'm convinced, and then I see Rowan. I promote a concert for Rowan down here, and Peter's like, "Well, I know I saw some copies of it. I know I saw the cover," and then Taylor is talking about him and Lagos a year with Richard Greene with The Zone, and then the thing gets scrapped, man. I mean, this to me is really part of Americana, music Americana. It's I need you to take me through this concept, because he goes on, the audio continues, and he's talking about how much he learned playing music that you were trying to get at. I guess there was also a funk, like a bluesy singer, Richie something, that was in the group too. I can't remember the name exactly. But he, he said he learned a lot playing that kind of music every day. I mean, can you talk about what you were trying to get at?
Well, first of all, it was a partnership between myself and a guy named Peter Ivers, who is no longer with us. If you did an interview with him, it might be the greatest moment of your life.
No, it's a talk with the spirit. So go ahead.
Yeah, Peter Ivers. So I would come up with these cockamamie melodies, and he would find lyrics to put to them. And I was trying to do like Mahavishnu. That was I just idolized those guys back then, with Billy Cobham, who I think I spoke to you about before.
And Jerry Goodman, too. Yeah, well, you sat behind the drum set. That's right.
Right. So I just wanted to do that, but I had no idea how. So I have to admit that it was a mess. The product that I came up with didn't work on any level. It was not coherent. I had just left C-Train, and I threw off musical reins and logical constraints to how you make music. I in a almost angry way, threw that all out the window, and came up with something that I don't even like, I have to say. So Warner Brothers hated it, and it was, I was very immature. It was a very rough time for me then. I think this is after I left Grissman, which went from the great thing.
This is around this is like maybe right before the Great American String Band. I'm just saying it's the Pacific Standard Oil thing came. It was all in that time, right around 73. But I just feel like I don't know, man. I don't think that's a big. I mean, it's okay to struggle, man. To me, it's like you're playing with Paul Lagos. Like Jim Keltner idolized Paul Lagos. Can you talk about?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I do. I mean,
I idolized Jim.
Yeah, well, go ahead. But I mean, the point is that Lagos. I mean, I guess he had a house in the hills, and
yes,
Keltner used to go up there during the L.A. riots, during the Watts riots, and I mean, he said, Paul was troubled cat. He was a genius. He had some mental issues, as all most geniuses do, and but he was opinionated, and he just played music. And to me, it's like conceptually, I just would love to hear. Maybe you're not happy with it. I just want to know, were there ever any pressings even made?
Maybe, but you mentioned Paul Lagos. A couple of things about him.
Yeah, go ahead.
When I started the band, the A&R guy at Warner Brothers, almost remembered his name just now. I mentioned Paul Lagos, and he started laughing. He said, "Dad, you're kidding. That's the guy that plays backwards." Backwards. That's right. So what happened, we're in the studio. I was spending like thousands of dollars just throwing it away because Warner Brothers gave me a lot of money. And we started recording the Orange Blossom Special. And that wasn't Paul, well, I don't know if it was his cup of tea or not, but during the recording, this is going to be a little bit off color of what I'm going to tell you.
That's all right.
He stood up from his drum stool, took his pants down, and started beating his dick with a stick.
That is that is pretty crass. What was that his way of saying? This is not my bag? Is that what he was saying?
Yeah, he was saying he was saying I was jerking off or whatever. This is crap.
Wow.
Well, I don't know what he was saying. It was very insulting. So I fired him on the spot, but I didn't even know how to fire people. So I fired him, but I paid him the whole fee for the whole album. Not realizing, well, I didn't have to, and then got in a series of different drummers. The thing was, that was the beginning of the falling apart, kind of.
Wow, I didn't. Okay, so that's interesting. So a lot of the tracks had different trap drummers on it.
Right. So Larry Taylor didn't tell you that story, did he?
LT, he was just he was also. I mean, there's also this bone of contention for people that that like myself who are music archaeologists, and he said that when I spoke to Rowan 3 or 4 years ago, Rowan said that on the Mule Skinner album, in fact, there were a couple of tracks that Larry Taylor played bass on. And Larry said that he wasn't on the album, but he played live with you guys. And that's the other part.
Right. He didn't.
Go ahead.
He didn't play on the album. He couldn't get that bluegrass thing. He was a different kind of player. So we did a little bit with him. We might have played the Ash Grove. I don't remember. But
absolutely. No,
I was willing to.
He was more of a funk blues guy.
Yeah, I wanted to pursue him. I love his playing, but Grissman wouldn't have it. Grissman was more focused on getting some real bluegrass done here, because the gig started. We were the backup band for Bill Monroe, who was on his way into town, and so I was asked to put this band together for Bill Monroe, who was going to do a video. So Grissman, I have to hand it to him, said, Larry can't do this. This is, you don't want to. Bill Monroe is a very specific kind of guy. So anyway, what happened was that Bill never showed up, so we did the gig without him. But that was the focus of what the band was supposed to be about. With Rowan and Grissman and me and Bill Keith and some real and Clarence White, fucking genius of all time. That was the band for Bill Monroe, and different bass players.
I mean, that is
different because
yeah. To me,
different because Larry didn't.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No. I said just different because Larry didn't work out, so we got someone else in there. I think his name was Stuart Shulman. Right.
I mean, it's just for it's important because a lot even on that Mule Skinner album, both the reissue and the original press, they do not list. They don't tell you what tracks people play on. John Guerin is listed as one of the drummers on there. I always just
and John Kahn played bass.
John Kahn played bass. I want to read you. I just transcribed an interview I did with the percussionist M. Tume, and then I just want you to riff on it. He's talking about the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and he said, in that period of music, the one thing you had to have was your own sound. In today's world, young cats go to school and study John Coltrane solos on Love Supreme. I don't care about that. That doesn't tell me about you. It tells me you can play John Coltrane. You go to school and they teach you how to copy something. I call it tracing paper music. And it's after 500 interviews, Richard, this is our third. To me, this is a fascinating thing. I mean, you make something up experientially, indigenously, whether it's the Zone or the Jake Feinberg Show. You're not tracing paper. You're going to fall down. You're going to get up. You're going to continue to create and obviously create your own individual sound. In the new acoustic music in bluegrass today, what is the school like in bluegrass? I don't believe that there are like academic schools, but in general, are there new sounds in bluegrass? Can you identify them and talk about them, or are people just tracing paper music?
Well, if you learn, all right, it's a lot like the classic, old school of classical music or classical violin, or bluegrass or jazz. All these genres sort of have an inventor at the beginning.
Right.
And if you're one generation down if you're in the same generation as the inventor, you get it. You get that. Then you teach that to the next generation. And by now, bluegrass is like 10 generations down or something. And the people who are showing other people how to play bluegrass, it's diluted. They didn't. You know what I'm saying? It's too many.
The lineage has been broken, right? It doesn't go back far enough.
It's been diluted. Now, if you're curious as a bluegrass musician, you will go back, listen to Monroe, and you'll formulate your sound based on those rules of that genre or the stylistic elements of the genre. An interesting story. Chris Thiele was 11 years old, and my band was the first band he played in, and we did some touring. And there's one tune, Panhandle Country, on my first Grasses Greener album. He plays that solo at the age of 11. And if you were to hear that, you'd hear the same guy. And he sounds as good then as now. It's kind of amazing. And when I met him, he had just broken his forearm playing baseball. So there was a cast on his picking hand. Didn't bother him at all. Didn't affect his playing at all negatively. And anyway, we had a lot of rehearsals. And this 11-year-old genius kid is in my house. And I say, I might have told you this to you before, but I'll tell it again. I want to play you something. So I put a Bill Monroe record on, and at attention, I wanted to show him the rhythm, the chop, the Bill Monroe driving a band. And his attention span disappeared, like he just wandered. He didn't even probably start to listen to it. It was just something foreign, I guess, to a little kid. Of course, now I'm sure he's aware of all that stuff. But there's an example of how a prodigy, I don't know where it comes from, but it didn't come from Bill Monroe, obviously. Now, if Chris Thiele never had heard Bill Monroe at that point and started teaching bluegrass, you'd have all this super technical, clean, soloistic kind of mandolin playing, which you do have a lot of these days. Without that Bill Monroe insanity, I guess I'd call it, he would just like down pick every note, boom, 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 like some kind of a jackhammer. And sometimes it was a little bit arrhythmic, but that was part of it. That was part of this craggy beauty. And that's part of what bluegrass is rough.
Right.
It's not smooth.
Right.
And this smooth shit, I don't like it.
And why is it? To me, it's like why have we gotten to this smooth grass? Why have we gotten in every? Is it just because, as a lot of the jazzers will tell me, music is now made for pacification rather than burning? I mean, is it really just about Go ahead.
Yeah, it's made for background music in sushi restaurants. That's what it's for.
Right, but I mean, you can honestly say that. I mean, is there anything in the neo bluegrass scene where there's an expansion, where there's a growth in the lineage, or somebody is being creative, younger?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I know there's because now we're saturated with all the information. Before it was radio and records when you guys were coming up, and then these very, very prolific touring circuits where you got to see these cats 2-3 times a year. All that's gone now. So let's just point to the people that are trying to expand the vocabulary of bluegrass.
Well, Doyle Lawson's group, amazing vocal group. There's a new group of girls. They're called Flat Lonesome. I mean, there's some unbelievably beautiful, great stuff out there in the genre.
And what are they doing? And what are they doing as far as how is it different, if it is?
Well, it's kind of expanding the vocal element of the music a lot. Now, Alison Krauss started out as a stone bluegrass band, but she had this other talent, which she started this wonderful pop kind of unique sounding, very accurate voice. So she started using, she used that in her bluegrass band, but it expanded out of that genre into all kinds of other more commercial genres. So a lot of bluegrass artists hear her now, and they say, "Oh, that's bluegrass. I want to do that." And so now they start doing the smooth thing. But you can't. There's your tracing paper problem. You can't do that with Alison Krauss. There's only one of her, and I have to clarify, she's absolutely wonderful, a phenomenal artist. But you can't try to copy that. What are you? It's crazy. So there's another factor or process in what's creating the smooth thing. It's the tracing paper. That's a great example. That's a great term.
Yeah, it's called tracing. I mean, this cat was on the bandstand with Miles. I'm going to read you another one, and I'm going to read you another thing that Mtume said because I want you to talk about it in the context of your bands or just in general playing with Bill or whoever. He said, Miles told me a story about Charlie Parker. And Miles just got with Charlie and they went to Chicago. The piano player didn't show, and there's always musicians in the audience. Some guy raised his hand and said, "Bird, I know all your songs." And Bird said, "Well, come on up and play, man." And they started playing, and when it was time for Miles' solo, Miles looked over at Bird and said, "Bird, the cat's playing the wrong changes." And Bird said, "Well, I'll play them with them, and they won't be wrong." and and that's the point, is that I think people are like, that even in today, my generation, I'm 38, Gen Xer. Obviously, you go down below to the millennials. I could be, and there's plenty of, listen, I've been talking to my peers, and there are some really nasty players who are playing odd meters, and they're playing with dissidents. And so I don't want to clump everybody into the wrong thing. But the idea is, okay, they're playing the wrong changes, you play them with them. All right? Stop thinking so much. Stop worrying about perfection and go with it and turn it into something unique. I mean, can you talk about a time when you were maybe harboring this need for individual perfection, how to be in the right key, and then all of a sudden, you wound up turning something, that wasn't necessarily in the right chord, into something great?
Oh, that's me. I did a few recordings of the Bach Violin Concerto in E major. I put my own changes in it. Actually, Bjorn Neidlinger was an influence on me at that time.
Well, that dude is hiding from me right now. So go ahead, continue.
Yeah. So he said, just skip that bar, take that bar out. So I took it out, and it was great. So then I started adding, 1, 2, 4, 5, or 1, 2, 5, 4, whatever, 4 or 5 progressions in there, and changed Bach around, but left his melody exactly the same. And it turned into some kind of cool bluegrass for me. So I don't know if this is addressing what you're talking about, but chord changes are just a tool. They're just, it's a great musical fun thing to do, is to don't touch the melody, but just try different changes underneath. You get some amazing, astonishing results that way. So that's what I have to say about chord changes. They're a tool. You don't have to follow them at all. But you better know the melody. You got to know the melody, otherwise you're a dick.
Right. Paul Lagos taking his stick out and beating his dick with it. That's the best story I've heard in a long time, man. That dude was crazy, man. I mean,
oh yeah. Did
you, going back to one thing that we did vet really hard in our first interview was just, you just becoming infatuated with Scotty Stoneman and the way he played the fiddle, and then he wound up crashing with you for a while. And but I kind of wanted, since that time I've talked to David Crosby, and when the Byrds were playing on Sunset Boulevard, he said that Allen Ginsberg would come with his partner, and they would dance all night, to the music. And I just wanted to ask you about your associations with the beat poets specifically, and who, aside from their writings, the kind of impact that they had on you as an individualist in terms of your music career.
Well, it's a tough question because I can't remember any of their names.
Ferlinghetti and Lord Buckle. I'm not even saying that they're all beats, but they're all, there's Ginsberg, Kerouac, and then the pranksters too. I mean, if you can merge both of them, but I mean, those guys, to me, like, without the Merry Pranksters, there is no psychedelic movement in the Bay Area, period. There really isn't. Those guys were the precursors. But I mean, Marty Ballin from Jefferson Airplane went downstairs into his mother's basement when in high school, and Lord Buckley's riffing poetry with a black jazz band behind him. I mean, this is like insane. So to me, it's like I'm just trying to figure out, did you even have any connection to them at all, or did it just not even register with you?
Well, kind of an artistic connection. But at that time, I was touring the South with Bill Monroe, and yet it was 65 and 6. And you're talking about early 60s, middle 60s probably. I just wasn't there. I was in other parts of the country in a whole other community, artistic community. So I can't say there's a very direct connection there. But let me say about the Byrds one little thing. They had what was their first hit? Anyway,
Tambourine Man.
They were, yes, that's right, and something like that. Yeah. And they were at the Go-Go on Sunset Boulevard, and Chris Hillman was in my Bluegrass Band at that time, and he would go do that a little bit, but he was mainly playing bluegrass on mandolin. And then that band, overnight, that band became hugely famous, and that was the end of me and Chris Hillman. But there's a little interesting connection there. I was right there when that happened. It was kind of amazing, kind of miraculous.
Can you talk about the band that you had with him, the Bluegrass Band, and who was in that?
I think David Lindley might have been. This was the earlier '60s. I was playing at that time with David Lindley, Chris Hillman. It's hard to remember some of the names. It's can't remember now. That's where I started becoming friends with Taj Mahal, who later we did some things together with David Grisman that were quite amazing.
Can you talk about when you first met Taj? Because Nick Turn, those gigs, the Great American Music Band, I guess John Kahn was probably doing Midnight at the Oasis with Maria or whatever, but he couldn't do the gigs. How did you connect with Taj?
Well, he was such a friendly, open guy back in the early Ash Grove days that we just, every time I saw him, I just loved it. The Chambers brothers were back then too at the Ash Grove.
Oh no, Lester Chambers. Lester Chambers and Taj had a jug band together.
Oh, they were just geniuses. So anyway, we had this. Wanted to do these gigs somewhere in Texas, Austin, or somewhere, and I think I said, well, let's get Taj Mahal or something. So we contacted him, and he agreed to do it, but he was by then really famous, so he could only do half the week. I think Nick Turn was in the band, Grisman. Can't remember too much else. There was one or two other people in the band, and it was phenomenal. Taj would do a solo number in every show. That was just the showstopper. Just him alone with bass. A brilliant musician.
He was playing.
He could play the bluegrass
he was
just
playing,
fine.
He was playing upright bass.
Yeah, and no problem with the bluegrass. Even though he was from other genres or whatever, he had no problem with any kind of music. The guy was just brilliant.
I got to
anyway,
I want to just hold that thought because I want to get back to Mahavishnu in a minute. But what Billy Cobham told me in one of our interviews was that the only band that could because most people did not want to open or close, or mainly close for Mahavishnu Orchestra, right? They were petrified of doing that. The only dude that could keep people in the seats, either opening or closing a show for Mahavishnu, was Solo Taj.
Amazing.
Unreal, man.
Well, C-Train opened for them on a whole bunch of gigs too.
C-Train, no, listen, I'm just saying, like, it was, the Section did with Lee Sklar and Korchmar, and C-Train did, and you know what it was? He was telling me this story about, I forget who was there. I think it might have been like Jose Feliciano or something. And I guess it was just the point is that you had if you had to follow Mahavishnu, that was a tall order. And the only one that could keep people there was Taj. Anyway, continue. I didn't mean to break your thought there about the Taj.
No, that's a good way. That's a good way to finish the thought.
Yeah. I wanted to. This is something from Peter Rowan here. He talked about the rule of the old school. He said, Vassar Clemens told me one time, he said, Pete, you know what it was like being on the road with Bill Monroe? You had to drive all night, shave in cold water, raise your hand up high and smile. That's the rule of the old school. I mean, how many times did you shave with cold water and just have to get up there and smile?
Well, I think it was pre-shaving days. I mean, that's hardly anything. But that's it. That's kind of it. It's very much like this, like the popularization of Zen training. You just do shit that has nothing to do with why you're there, so you could do the thing while you're there, like for an hour, and then you have 23 hours of other stuff. You just do it. Don't even think about it. I didn't even think about it at all. I knew why I was there. So Vassar had a point there. I have to agree.
I wanted you to talk a little bit about going back to what was inspiring for you. Did you get a chance to go see like when Jean-Luc Ponty did that experience with George Duke and John Hurd and Dick Burke? Were you getting off on that too, or was Mahavishnu more your bag?
No. Jean-Luc Ponty's acoustic days,
yes,
were some of the hottest, most amazing jazz violin ever done. I might have seen him once. When I saw him live, he was already playing electric soft music. But when I first heard him, I was completely blown away. I transcribed all of his shit too. I was a transcribing fool back then. Unbelievable acoustic, strong violin player. Amazing technique, amazing feel, sound, everything. Huge inspiration to me from those days of his playing.
Can we talk a little bit about just in general? Tell me about some of the projects you're working on outside the box. Just things that you are pouring your creative soul into on this very important election day.
Well, I'm not pouring too much soul into that, but I'm going to vote for a bunch of stuff and not vote for other stuff. In 2000, what year was our last interview? Do you remember the year?
Yeah, the year was 2011.
Right.
Yeah.
In 2013, I did a tour with the Jim Kweskin Jug Band in Japan, and came back really sick from a heart disease, actually.
Wow.
Which I'm cured from now. But that weakened me physically, so I couldn't play for a long time at all. And slowly sort of got out of playing the violin, left the violin. And now I don't do any music at all. I don't do anything musical. I don't teach. I listen to music very selectively, but I'm only a photographer now for the last several years. Since 2013, I did maybe 2 or 3 gigs. That's it. So I know you weren't expecting that answer.
No, I want to talk to you. I mean, how are you dealing with that?
I loved it. It was such a. You don't know you're in a struggle until you stop struggling. And music, to be in music and do it well, is a constant challenge. There's never any relaxing. When you're not practicing and trying to play better, you have to call people to get gigs. And without both of those elements, you're nothing. So to have all of that just kind of shed away, it's a very freeing experience. I do dream from time to time that I'm on some stage somewhere playing an amazing solo. There's nothing like that feeling when you're improvising and it's just sailing and working. It's like another reality, and that's wonderful. But I don't, to be honest with you, I don't miss it at all. And part of the reason for that is I'm pretty happy with what I've done. I've got a lot of product out there, recorded product, live performances recorded, just showing up out there on YouTube and stuff. I'm fine with it. And to get back to that level of playing now it would take such a gargantuan effort of practicing and getting back into it that I'm not going to do it. There was another complication besides the heart problem. I had some finger problems. I had a bunch of physical problems that in the last days of playing, the last couple of years of playing, were quite a challenge. I had to practice for 30, 40 minutes before I could play the one note nicely. You know, when you're young, it sort of comes quicker, and as you get older and older, it comes a lot slower. Except there's some musicians out there like Grappelli. He was unbelievable to the very end. He could just spill that stuff out. You know,
Yeah.
there's that phenomenon too, but that's not me.
I mean, you
always-
are not somebody also that is. I mean, just for the record, you're not going to go out unless you can play with the vigor and the chops that you once had. I mean, you don't want to just go through it and do it because you want to get stuff out of your system. You have heavy, high expectations for yourself as a musician. That's why you're not playing.
That's true. I don't know if that's why I'm not playing, but that's a true statement. If I were to go on stage with some band, I would put that 5, 6 months. I need a lot of notice, but I would put those, like, say, somebody Paul McCartney wanted me to play in his band and wanted me to do my thing. I'd do it. I would take the 6 months. I need a lot of notice, but I'd take the 6 months and just get it back up again.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Because I know I can.
So I mean,
I've done a few.
Go ahead.
I've done a few recording sessions in the last couple of years where I had 2 or 3 weeks notice, and I got it good enough to do some written part in my style, but not to do the full out, new acoustic improvisation thing. That would take some time to get that back up. Last August, I did practice up to do I owed a friend a favor, and I wanted to do a string seminar for her because she gave me so many great gigs. So I drove up to Seattle for Strings Without Boundaries and did a free seminar on the chop for my friend Julie Lyon Lieberman, and then visited Port Townsend and found out that David Grisman lives in Port Townsend.
That's right.
And here I had just practiced 2 or 3 weeks for the first time in 3 years. And I'm visiting David Grisman. He says, "Come on, let's jam. And I say, no, because I'm not in shape. But then it dawned on me, wait a minute. Here's a window that will never open again in my life. I had just been practicing. I'm sitting with David Grisman, and he wants to play. And his son, Sam Grisman, was there, too. A brilliant bass player. So we started playing, the three of us, and he's got a beautiful house in a wood-paneled dining room. Gorgeous sounds, and me and Grisman and his son just started playing the old shit, and it was all there. I constrained it to the more simple kind of tunes because I didn't want to write down chord changes and try to use my brain at all. Just wanted to play, and it was a completely wonderful experience. It was heaven. Sitting there for about an hour and a half, 2 hours doing that. All the old connections were still there between he and I. And that was a few months ago. So if he wanted me to play with him, I would get it up again.
I would get it. This is one of the most invigorating stories I've heard in quite some time. I mean, you had not connected with David for how many years before that?
70s, maybe
Right.
a little bit in the 80s. I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, that to me is so, because Sam, I mean, I know Sam is he's got chops and great feel, and I mean, can you, did you feel, what was your feeling like when the jam was over? I mean, and you had to go back to Southern California. Did you think that part of you wanted to stay up there and keep playing?
Oh, no. I was dedicated to the idea of getting this back together with Grisman. But then as I'm driving back home of the hours, and we took a few days, the reality started setting in, that what he would have to do, he's got an ongoing band that's touring all the time, and what I'd have to do, and then the idea of traveling came back, and Homeland Security and the TSA and all that shit, which ruined music for everybody.
I know.
And that all started coming back. That what would it actually mean to do this? So I did send him a couple of text messages and things saying that if he wants me to do it, I'm there. If he doesn't, I'm still retired. And that was our last contact when I sent him that.
You know, I just would like you to talk about some of the aesthetic qualities of like, even though, you know, at first you were like, oh no, I can't jam, and then you're like, wait a minute, I have been practicing, I've been doing this thing, let's do it. Can you talk about being able to lean on some of the old school? I mean, listen, here's the bottom line. We'll tie it back to what we talked about before. Within academia, you are being taught how to play like somebody else. But you guys in your school, I mean, Stinson Beach, I mean, let's face it, it was such a shiftless life, and it was so great because you guys would just basically listening to each other, jamming and burning and, you know, flubbing, but then going out. But you had a different style of learning. Can you talk about some of that those qualities of camaraderie within the construct of the band that you were able to lean on, and like you said, it was just like the old times?
You mean the product that I made with David Grisman, the new acoustic invention?
No, I mean like when you were up in Port Townsend and you guys just started playing simple tunes, but it flowed so beautifully. Can you talk about some of the things that you guys, some of the stuff that you learned together in your own as street scholars that worked in this most recent jam that you were able to lean on?
Oh, well, he and I, at all times, channel Bill Monroe, just channeling it, whether it's conscious or not. We have that kind of extreme, critical thing. Bill Monroe would not accept anything unless it was just exactly right. He was very demanding. So we were channeling that, and also the way he played. And Grisman and I sort of fell in love with Bill Monroe at the same time, a year or two before I joined his band, Monroe's band. Grisman and I were playing with Bluegrass with Jerry Garcia up around the Bay Area and stuff. This is before Bill Monroe, before Old and the Way, when Jerry Garcia was only a banjo player. No Grateful Dead.
Yeah, I know. That's the legendary story when David first laid eyes on you, and you almost took out Herb Peterson's eye with an up bow.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, those days, yeah.
Yeah. I know it all.
Yeah, you sure do.
But no, so, I mean, but for the audience listening around the world, what does it mean to channel Bill Monroe, and how does that help you guys connect after 40, 50 years?
Well, you know, it doesn't help us connect. It is the connection. And also the stuff that he and I came up with on how to play our two instruments back in the 70s when we did the Great American Music Band. Those were some ideas we came up with how to play. So that's another area of connection. The question, I don't know how to answer it. I think there's not much of an answer there except what I just said.
I mean, that's cool. I mean, it's just, to me, it's like, I mean, all I'm saying is that I'm glad that it's just so nice that the bonds of music are relatively eternal, and it's great that you guys. I mean, David is loves smoking marijuana, and Washington it's legal there, and he's got a nice place up there, and it's just nice to know that you guys are still hitting it, you know. And I think that to me is probably one of the best stories. I mean, are you where do you go outside of the urban jungle to do photography?
Oh, well, I've driven across with my wife. Is very helpful and supportive, even though she's a full-on working violinist in Los Angeles. we've gone across the country 2 or 3 times just to take pictures. Driven, you know. I go places. You know, I love the falling down buildings in the South, and I like decrepitude, things that are, you know, there's a beauty in things, you know, structures that are dying. That's one of my favorite things. I go all over the place. Recently, like I said, Port Townsend, Seattle, Portland, took a bunch of pictures up there. And then I have a full-on photography studio. I took all the music out of my studio and moved in tables and stuff. And there was a lot of music to take out, boxes and boxes, and I still can't get all of it out of here. And moved in tables and equipment and monitors and printers, and for the last few years, that's all I do down here. It's interesting the analogy between the two art forms. To me, they're almost the same. You know, you think of something and then you do it with an instrument, and then you use software to tweak it and stuff, like Pro Tools versus Photoshop. Same damn thing. So there was an easy transition there. In fact, there was no transition. I just had always been sort of doing both anyway. So that's what my life is like now. And when the conversation started with you and I, my printer was spewing out a print that I just done I'm doing a series on the old Atlanta prison farm, which is completely dilapidated and falling apart when I got there. And it was all, you're not supposed to go in there. It was all walled off and chained off. I went in there anyway, and the cop was waiting for me when I left. But I got a bunch of pictures of that thing. And I was printing one of those just now when the phone rang, and I'm working on that series right now.
Are you talking about the slave camps from the Civil War?
No, it's called the Old Atlanta Prison Farm, where it's a farm with a big prison on it, and they would work the farm. And now it's completely abandoned, and every wall has graffiti on it, but the bars are still there in some of the cells. It's quite provocative. I'm going to put a bunch of it out on Facebook. Every time I make a print, I sort of do it on Instagram and then Facebook, so people get to see it. So that's what I'm doing right this moment. That series. So I think that's the kind of stuff I do.
Have you voted yet today?
No, but I have it all laid out. Every box is checked. I do an absentee ballot.
Oh, nice.
An absentee ballot. Fill it in, then just drop it off. I don't stand there and and vote. I just drop off the ballot.
Well, Richard, we'll do it again real soon. I love talking to you, man, and I can't promise that I can give you that Strings album. Although I must admit, there's a great picture of you with a sweater. I think Joe Carroll played bass on that session. That Pacific Standard Oil, man, that is burning. And you really can, before you came up with this, playing bluegrass music with non-traditional instruments. I mean, it was interesting to hear you talking it out on record. I'll have to find a way to get you a copy of that.
Well, what's the name of the exact name and number or something? I'll try to find it.
Well,
what's the exact name?
Definitely never got reissued at all. But I can look. Let me just look it up.
Well, you can send me an email. You don't have to use airtime for this.
Okay.
Send me some kind of email about it.
Yeah, no.
It's on eBay. Someone's got it.
Oh, you can. Oh, definitely. You should pick it up though, because that is not. You're the lead on that. There's a whole track devoted to the Zone and Richard Greene, and like I said, there's a Warner Brothers catalog number, so that thing was on its way out the door, and then they scrapped it, which is just a travesty because Lagos's penis was all over that thing. Anyway, Richard, man, much love to you, man.
Wow.
Great to hear you, man, and we'll be in touch.
Thanks, Jake. Thanks for everything, all your support. I really like it. I love it.
Yeah, keep supporting me too, man. All right.
You got it. Okay.
Later on. Bye-bye. It's a very, very talented musician. We just heard from Richard Greene, and we're honored to be able to talk to him. At this point in his career, with physical limitations, he is now a full-on photographer and having a ball doing it. But just had a great time with him. We're going to rejoin the Jim Parisi show and be back with David Nichtern right after this.
Conservative Republican with blue-collar appeal can reach out on a place like Maine, as opposed to the assumption you have to be a moderate. Second, you got to look at New Hampshire. If Trump carries New Hampshire, it's game on. At that point, if I were Hillary and her team, I'd be very, very worried. Obviously, in the South, you're going to look at North Carolina, and you're going to look at Florida, because if Trump carries those two, we're really in for a long night. Unless, as a poll that came out this morning suggests, he carries Michigan, in which case we're in for a very short night, because at that point it'll be clear that Donald Trump will be the next president. So